Elon Musk. You know the name, you've seen the headlines. But behind all the billions and the controversies, there's this powerful story, a legend, really. And in this breakdown, we're going to dig into that legend, specifically through the eyes of the motivational source Cool Mitra, to figure out what they see as the key pieces of the Musk mystique. So right away, the source makes this really clear distinction. On one side, you've got what everybody knows, the guy's a billionaire. But on the other side is what they argue is the real story, his revolutionary mindset. For them, the money is just a side effect, you know? It's not the main event. The real engine is how he thinks. So that begs the question, right? If the story isn't about the money, then what is it about? What are the actual building blocks that, according to Kulmitra, make up this whole Musk mystique? Let's break it down. All right, first up, beyond the billions. The source really insists that to even begin to understand his mindset, you have to look past the dollar signs and focus on the character, not the cash. And this quote from the source really nails that point. The argument is that his whole mission is playing on a totally different level than just racking up wealth. So what are these traits that supposedly put him far above? Well, let's dive into the first one. Next, we have the unrelenting competitor. According to the source, the first major pillar of this mystique is this incredibly intense competitive drive. And it's not just about beating other people, it's about pushing against the very idea of limits. The source shares this amazing story from his college days, told by his first wife, Justine. So, they take an exam. She gets a fantastic score, a 97. He gets a 98. Now, for pretty much anyone else on the planet, that's a win, right? Game over. But not for him. And this slide just breaks down that thinking perfectly. I mean, look at this. The problem wasn't the 98. That's a great score. The competition wasn't his girlfriend. He'd already beaten her score. The action he took, actually going to the professor to get it regraded, shows you what the real goal was. It was to compete against perfection itself. It's a mindset where good enough just isn't in the vocabulary. Okay, pillar number 3. Work is the celebration. This next idea from the source is all about his relationship with work. And the core idea is simple, but kind of wild. Success itself is the only reward you should ever need. This line from the source is just so powerful. It really frames his whole philosophy. The reward for all that grinding isn't a vacation. It isn't a party. The reward is the success. The achievement itself is the champagne popping. And the source brings up all these legendary examples. Sleeping on the factory floor, working a 24-hour shift on his own birthday. I mean, these aren't just stories about working hard. According to this narrative, they're examples of someone who finds the ultimate prize in the work itself, not in the time off you get afterwards. And this kind of work ethic, well, it leads to some pretty impossible-sounding results. Take this number right here, 50,000. What could that even be? That number goes back to 2018 during what Tesla called production hell. Demand was through the roof, but the factory just couldn't keep pace. So Musk sets this goal that all the experts said was absolutely impossible. Build 50,000 Model 3s in a single quarter. He pushed that company to its absolute limit, and they actually hit the number. It's held up as the ultimate proof of sheer will beating logistics. Next chapter, learning without limits. So you have to ask, where does all the expertise to build rockets and electric cars come from? Well, the source points to this next pillar, his identity as a self-taught genius. And according to the source, this started really early. At just 9 years old, he had supposedly read the entire Encyclopedia Britannica. And that wasn't just some childhood habit he grew out of. When he decided he wanted to build rockets, the story goes he didn't just go out and hire a bunch of experts. He became one. He just read textbooks on rocket science and aerospace engineering until he could literally stand there and debate the core principles with his top engineers. And this brings us to what might be the most powerful pillar in this entire legend, the can't blind spot. It's this fundamental refusal to accept limitations. Or as the source describes it, he has a total blind spot for the word can't. Let's just run through the examples the source gives us. They said you can't build a safe and secure internet bank when people were still terrified of putting their credit cards online. He co-founded X.com, which would eventually become PayPal. They said there was no way you could start a new American car company and actually survive against the giants in Detroit. He invested in and eventually took over this tiny little startup called Tesla. And, well, you know the rest of that story. And then the biggest one of all. For 50 years, going to space was something only superpowers did. They said it was just too big, too expensive for anyone but a government. He created SpaceX. This story from the source just illustrates that mindset perfectly. So back in 2006, the U.S. Air Force bumps SpaceX's Falcon 1 launch for a government rocket. The rules were clear. He had to wait. But instead of waiting, he finds a new launch site on an island in the Pacific and launches before the government rocket. The insight here is so critical. He didn't just break the rule, he went to a different game board where the rule didn't even apply. All right, our final pillar from this source is all about moving at the speed of light, especially when it comes to what customers are saying. We're calling it, the customer is the clock. And this timeline just shows that whole idea in action. Day 1, a customer tweets about a problem at a charging station. Just 25 minutes later, Musk himself replies. By day 6, that's less than a week after one single tweet, Tesla implements a new global policy to solve that very issue. The source uses this as the ultimate example of a company that can go from a single customer complaint to massive corporate action at unbelievable speed. So when you put all of these pieces together, you get what Coolmeter presents as the Musk mystique. It's not about the money, it's a formula, really. An unrelentless competitive drive, limitless self-education, an obsessive work ethic where the work is the reward, and a total blindness to the word impossible. That is the legend they're selling. And that really brings us to our final thought here. We've taken apart the legend as it's presented in the source material. We've seen the stories, we've seen the pillars that hold it up. But the real question I want to leave you with is this. Why are narratives like this so powerful? What is it about this specific story of struggle, of genius, of sheer defiance that we find so compelling? That's something to think about.